Let me ask you something that might sound a little unusual at first. When was the last time you had a thought that felt completely your own? Not influenced by the headlines, not borrowed from social media, not molded by your friends, your culture, or your favorite creators. I mean, a thought so pure, so unfiltered, that it seemed to rise from the deepest part of you. If you're struggling to recall, you're not alone. Because we live in a time where real individuality is slowly fading, quietly replaced by something else. Something that appears safe, comforting, even noble on the surface, but carries a hidden cost underneath. We call it modern collectivism. And whether we realize it or not, it's transforming how we think, how we act, and even how we see ourselves. Now, there's nothing new about groups. Humanity has always gathered in tribes, families, nations, religions, and communities. Collectivism in its early form gave us safety, survival, and belonging. It was the glue that kept ancient civilizations alive. But what happens when that glue begins to harden, turning into cement that locks us into shapes we never truly chose? What happens when the price of belonging becomes the slow death of our own independent thought? That's the hidden tension of modern collectivism. And it's one of the greatest psychological struggles of our age. Here's something interesting. If you study history, every generation believed it was more enlightened than the one before. The people of the Renaissance thought they had broken free from medieval chains of thought. The Enlightenment thinkers saw themselves as torchbearers of reason, leaving superstition behind. And today, we tell ourselves we are freer than ever, because information is everywhere, voices are amplified, and no opinion is too small to be shared. But is that truly freedom? Or have we just built a different kind of prison, one made, not of walls, but of collective approval? Think about how we live online. Scroll through your feed. What do you see? Endless streams of collective identities, shared opinions, and group judgments. One crowd says, "This is the right way to think." Another insists, "No, this is the truth." And the algorithms, silent but powerful, push us deeper into whichever crowd we've already chosen. Over time, we stop asking, "What do I actually believe?" and start asking, "What will make me accepted? What will protect me from criticism? What will show that I belong?" Slowly, almost invisibly, the individual voice inside us begins to fade. Here's the psychological twist. Belonging feels good. Neuroscience explains why. When we feel accepted by a group, our brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals linked to love and safety. And when we're excluded, the brain processes it almost like physical pain. In short, our biology is wired to push us toward conformity. But evolution didn't prepare us for a digital world where the group isn't a few dozen villagers. It's millions of voices shouting all at once, demanding loyalty. The pressure to conform isn't just local anymore. It's global, constant, inescapable. And that's where something strange starts to happen. We stop thinking in sentences and begin thinking in slogans. We replace ideas with hashtags. We trade deep reasoning for instant alignment. We repeat the same words others are saying, not because we understand them, but because silence feels too risky. In this way, modern collectivism doesn't arrive with noise or force. It slips in quietly, under the comforting mask of belonging, until one day, we realize the space for our own thought has almost disappeared. But here's where I want to open a loop for you, because this isn't just about society, politics, or technology. It's about something far more personal. It's about you, me, and what happens inside our own minds. Ask yourself, how many of the choices you make each day are truly yours? The clothes you wear, the beliefs you defend, the way you talk, the shows you watch, even the dreams you chase. How much of that is truly self-directed, and how much is shaped by the invisible collectives surrounding you? That's not an easy question, but it might be one of the most important ones you'll ever ask. Let me tell you a story. A few years back, researchers ran a fascinating experiment. They invited people into a room and showed them a set of simple visual tests, like comparing the lengths of lines. But there was a twist. Everyone in the room except one person was an actor. The actors had been told to deliberately give the wrong answers, confidently. And what happened? Again and again, the lone real participant abandoned their own correct answer and agreed with the group's wrong one. Even when their eyes told them otherwise, the urge to conform overpowered their independent judgment. This experiment, known as the Asch conformity study, reveals something deeply unsettling. We are far more likely to betray our own minds than we realize. And in today's world of digital collectives, that experiment is no longer confined to a lab. It's become our everyday reality. Now, you might be wondering, isn't collectivism sometimes a good thing? Doesn't it bring unity, progress, and shared identity? Absolutely. Collective action has led to revolutions, civil rights movements, scientific breakthroughs, and global awareness. Without collective thinking, humanity might never have left the caves. But here's the paradox. The same force that gives us strength can also erase our individuality if left unchecked. Modern collectivism thrives not just on unity, but on uniformity. It thrives when differences fade, when unique voices blend into one chorus, and when questioning that chorus feels like betrayal. And here's something I want you to remember. Once a society reaches that stage, creativity begins to suffer, because creativity, by nature, is the act of seeing differently. When individual thought fades, innovation slows. History shows this again and again. The most oppressive periods in history were often the least creative, because questioning the collective was punished. On the other hand, humanity's greatest leaps in art, science, and philosophy came from individuals bold enough to think against the grain. So when we trade individuality for comfort and safety, we don't just lose our own voice, we risk losing the future itself. But let me take you even deeper into this idea. Imagine a society where everyone thinks in the same way, speaks in the same tone of approval, and avoids the same taboos. At first, it might sound peaceful. No arguments, no division, just unity. But unity without individuality isn't harmony. It's silence. And silence comes with a price. Silence means no new questions, no radical ideas, no uncomfortable truths. And without those, progress stops. Here's the great irony of modern collectivism. Even as it suppresses individual thought, it disguises itself as freedom. It whispers, "Join us, and you'll be free from isolation. Agree with us, and you'll be part of something greater." And in a sense, that's true. But it's a kind of freedom that comes with a trade-off. The freedom of belonging at the cost of the freedom of thinking. Picture this for a moment. A child drawing on a blank sheet of paper. No rules, no judgment, just pure imagination pouring out as colors and shapes. That's individuality in its purest form. But as the child grows, the paper slowly fills with lines drawn by others. Teachers, peers, society, digital crowds. Stay inside the lines, they say. Color this way. Think this way. Speak this way. Soon the blank canvas is gone. The child is still drawing, but the picture no longer belongs to them. It belongs to the collective. And the tragedy is, most of us never even realize when our canvas disappears. But here's the hope. Individuality, though buried, never fully dies. It waits. It whispers. Sometimes in a quiet late-night thought. Sometimes in a disagreement you feel but don't say aloud. Sometimes in a dream you can't quite explain. That's your inner self, still alive beneath the noise of the collective, asking for space. The real question is, will you listen? Or will you let the noise drown it out? In many ways, modern collectivism challenges us to wake up, to stop mistaking borrowed beliefs for original ones, to stop confusing group approval with self-worth, to stop equating noise with truth. Because the death of individual thought isn't a sudden event, it's a slow erosion. And the only way to stop it is to consciously reclaim your own mind, piece by piece. And that brings us back to where we began. When was the last time you had a thought that felt truly your own? Maybe you can't recall. Maybe you've never asked. But if you take just one thing from this reflection, let it be this. Individuality isn't something society gives you. It's something you protect, quietly, deliberately, every single day, against the subtle but powerful pull of the collective. So what does it really mean to reclaim your own thought? It doesn't mean rejecting every group or isolating yourself from others. It doesn't mean becoming a contrarian just for the sake of being different. It means learning to pause, to breathe, and to ask yourself, do I genuinely believe this? Or am I just repeating the collective voice? That simple question, asked often enough, becomes a compass. It guides you back to yourself. But I'll warn you, individuality is not the easiest path. It's quieter, sometimes lonelier, and far less rewarded. When you follow the crowd, the applause comes quickly. When you step aside, silence meets you first. And yet, history whispers a truth. The silence of individuality is often the birthplace of greatness. Think of the scientists who defied common knowledge, the artists who broke tradition, the philosophers who dared to question what others accepted. They weren't celebrated at first. They were doubted, mocked, even resisted. But their courage to think differently is what pushed humanity forward. Here's another thought loop for you. Have you noticed that your most original ideas often appear when you're alone? Not scrolling, not reacting, not absorbing others' opinions, just sitting quietly in stillness. That's because true originality rarely survives in a crowd. It needs space. It needs solitude. It needs your willingness to listen to a voice that might not be echoed by anyone else. Yet, in our hyper-connected world, solitude has become rare, almost feared. We fill every empty moment with noise, but maybe the silence we avoid is the very place where our real thoughts are waiting to surface. Now, let's zoom out for a moment and see the bigger picture. Collectivism isn't necessarily an enemy. It's not a villain lurking in the dark. It's simply a force, like fire. Fire can warm your home or burn it down. Collectivism can unite us for progress or reduce us to echoes of one another. The difference lies in balance. When collective identity supports individuality, society flourishes. But when it replaces individuality, society begins to suffocate. And right now, we're closer to that suffocation than we think. The numbers tell a story too. Studies in psychology show that social conformity has risen sharply in the digital age. One survey revealed that most people admit to self-censoring online, not because they changed their beliefs, but because they feared disapproval. Enough. Your study found that exposure to group consensus can actually alter memory, meaning people will literally misremember facts to align with the crowd. Think about that. The collective isn't just shaping our opinions, it's reshaping our memories, our very sense of reality. And if that doesn't alarm us, it should. But here's the twist. The same digital world that amplifies collectivism also gives us tools for individuality. Never before in history could one unique voice reach millions. Never before could an idea born in solitude ripple across the world overnight. The internet is both the megaphone of the crowd and the amplifier of the individual. Which means the death of thought isn't inevitable. It's a choice. A daily, conscious choice. And that brings us to the heart of it. What do we do once we reclaim our individuality? Do we guard it selfishly, holding it apart from the collective? Or do we bring it forward, offering it as a spark that strengthens the group? Because the truth is, society needs both. The collective gives us strength. The individual gives us direction. One without the other is incomplete. Picture this. a choir of 1,000 voices singing the same note. It's powerful, but flat, unchanging. Now imagine a single violin entering, playing a melody that cuts through the sameness. Suddenly, the music transforms. The choir doesn't disappear. It becomes richer because of the violin. That's individuality within collectivism. Not erased, not silenced, but present, distinct, and essential. And here's the emotional truth. The death of individual thought doesn't happen when the crowd gets louder. It happens when we stop trusting that our own voice matters. It happens when we believe the lie that the collective is everything, and the self is nothing. But the self is not nothing. The self is the seed from which every idea, every invention, every revolution begins. Protecting it isn't rebellion. It's responsibility. So tonight, when you put down your phone and the noise of the world finally quiets, try this. Ask yourself one question. What is one thought I've been carrying that is truly mine? Not borrowed, not echoed, not performed, just yours. Maybe it's small, an idea for a poem. Maybe it's big, a vision for your future. Whatever it is, write it down. Hold on to it. That's your voice, your violin, your spark. Because at the end of the day, modern collectivism will keep expanding. The crowd will always be there, shouting, demanding, absorbing. But so will you. And the most powerful thing you can do in a world that wants you to echo is to think, to speak, to remain distinct. To remember that while collectivism can guide us, only individuality can save us. And maybe that's the real paradox. The collective tells us belonging is everything, but true belonging only happens when you bring your authentic self to the table. Without individuality, there is no real collective, only an imitation. With individuality, the collective becomes alive, creative, and deeply human. So don't let your voice be swallowed. Don't let your thoughts dissolve into the noise. The world doesn't need more echoes. It needs originals. It needs you.